Today we're going to be talking about the 10th paragraph of Nāṉ Ār, which is actually quite a short paragraph. It consists of just 3 sentences, but it's this and the 11th paragraph are, in a certain sense, they're the 2 most important paragraphs, or certainly among the most important paragraphs in the whole work. Before actually talking about the paragraph, I'll give a little bit of introduction. We all know the essence of Bhagavan's teachings is that we should turn within and see what we actually are. Bhagavan expressed this very beautifully in verse 44 of Aksharam-malai. But instead of expressing it as his teaching, he said this is what Aruṇāchala taught him. What he says there is, Tirumbiya handane dinamaha kankan teriyum endranayen Aruṇāchala. Oh, Aruṇāchala, you said to me, not to me, actually even to me is not there, but Aruṇāchala, you said, Tirumbiya ham, that means turning within. Tanei dinamaha kankan, see yourself daily with the inner eye. The word dinam literally means daily, but the implication is constantly. So we should be constantly trying to turn within to see what we actually are. Ahakan means the inner eye. The inner eye is, to see physical things, we need the physical eye. To see mental things, we need the mental eye. But to see what we actually are, neither the physical eye nor the mental eye will enable us to see what we actually are. We can see what we actually are because we are just formless awareness. We can see ourselves only with the awareness that we actually are. So that, what he calls the inner eye, is that awareness. Or we can also understand it as attention. Now our attention is directed outwards. We need to turn our attention within to see what we actually are. Attention is nothing but the selective use of our awareness. Now we choose to attend to the world, we choose to be aware of the world, so we are attending to the world. Whatever we choose to be aware of, that is what we are attending to. So, turning within, daily see yourself with the inner eye. Teriyum. Teriyum means it will be known. So, or, it will be known. So that is the essence of Bhagavan's teachings. This we all have understood, but we need to turn within and see what we actually are. Why do we not do so? Bhagavan actually says this is the easiest of all things. There's nothing easier than knowing ourselves. Easier than knowing anything other than ourselves. Knowing ourselves logically should be easier. And we are always self-aware. So what is the problem? Why we are not turning within and seeing what we actually are? The answer is implied in this paragraph of Nāṉ Ār. Why Bhagavan says it's easy. To us, when we try it, it seems to be very difficult. Why does it seem to be difficult when Bhagavan says actually it's easy? The answer is we don't yet want to see ourselves. We're more interested in seeing other things. Our interest, our liking, our inclination, our desire to be aware of things other than ourselves are what Bhagavan refers to here as viṣaya-vāsaṉaigaḻ. Viṣaya means phenomenon, or it can also be used collectively for phenomena, all phenomena. That's everything that appears and disappears, everything that seems to be other than ourselves, and even the phenomena that we now seem to be. We now seem to be this body, even though it's an object perceived by us. So the liking, the inclination to be aware of all these things are what are called viṣaya-vāsaṇai, viṣaya-vāsaṇas. Vāsaṇa means a propensity, an inclination, a liking, a desire. So this desire to be aware of other things. And why do we desire to be aware of other things? Because we believe that we can obtain happiness from other things. We are actually the one infinite Satchidananda. So we're infinite happiness is our real nature. But when we rise as ego, we seem to be a finite person. We are this small person, limited in time, limited in space, limited in our knowledge, limited in every respect. And our happiness is also limited. So since our real nature is infinite happiness, we can never be satisfied with anything other than infinite happiness. So dissatisfaction is the very nature of the ego. As Bhagavan says, when the mind rises, the world appears. When the world appears, dukkha arises. Dukkha means, it's often translated as suffering, but it's, I think a more comprehensive translation of dukkha is dissatisfaction. We experience a little pleasure here and there, but nothing actually satisfies us. Whatever desires, ambitions, hopes, dreams we may have, even if we achieve what we want, we are still not satisfied, and we begin hankering for something else. Because what we actually want is infinite happiness, and we cannot get infinite happiness from anything other than ourselves. Because infinite happiness is our real nature, and as Bhagavan said, there's not even the slightest happiness in any of the things of the world. It's only because of our aviveka, our lack of discrimination, our lack of ability to distinguish one thing from another, that we mistake the objects of the world as giving us happiness. We have a desire for chocolate. If we eat some chocolate, our desire is temporarily satisfied. The agitation of our mind in the form of that desire temporarily subsides, so we experience a little happiness. But where does the happiness come from? Does it come from the chocolate? No, it comes from within us. It's because the agitation of our mind caused by that desire for chocolate temporarily subsides, the mind to that extent subsides, and to that extent it experiences a little pleasure, a little happiness. So whatever happiness we seem to derive from other things actually comes from within. So, but because of our wrong discrimination, even though we read this, we understand from Bhagavan, still we have a deep-rooted conviction that happiness comes from outside, and so our mind continues to go out seeking happiness. That desire to go out, to experience things other than ourselves that we believe will give us happiness, these are viṣaya-vāsaṇas. These are the problem. So the problem we face is our desires to go outwards. The solution, the desires to go outwards is a misuse of our will. So we need to rectify our will. Instead of having desire to go outwards, we must have desire or love to go within. So the only solution to this, the only way to get rid of outward going desires is to cultivate the opposite desire, the love to turn within. This is what is implied by Bhagavan in this paragraph and the next paragraph. In the first sentence of this paragraph, though it's 3 sentences, they're 3 longish sentences. So I'll explain clause by clause. The first 2 words are a relative clause. toṇḍṟutoṭṭu varugiṉḍṟa, viṣaya-vāsaṉaigaḻ. The third word is viṣaya-vāsaṉaigaḻ. So he's describing the viṣaya-vāsaṇaigaḻ as toṇḍṟutoṭṭu varugiṉḍṟa. toṇḍṛutoṭṭu means toṇḍṛu is old or very ancient. Toṭṭu means touching or beginning from. So from time immemorial, from ancient times, varugiṉḍṛa, which come, viṣaya-vāsaṇaigaḻ, that is, the viṣaya-vāsaṇas that come from time immemorial. That is, ever since we rose as this ego, we began seeking happiness outside us, and by our seeking happiness outside us, we ourselves created these viṣaya-vāsaṇas. So since we ourselves created them, we alone can undo them. And we can undo them only by the opposite, by the love to turn within. So, toṇḍṛutoṭṭu viṣaya-vāsaṇaigaḻ, aḷavaṭṭṛaṉavāy-k kaḍal-alaigaḻ pol toṉṭṛiṉum. Though these viṣaya-vāsaṇas appear, aḷavaṭṭṛaṉavāy, alavu means limit, aṭṭṛaṇavāy means without limit, unlimited, in countless numbers is the implication. So unlimited, in an unlimited way, these viṣaya-vāsaṇas appear, kaḍal-alaigaḻ pol, like the waves of the ocean. Kaḍal means ocean, alai is a wave. Alaigaḻ is the plural, waves. So like ocean waves. Though they appear in countless numbers, like ocean waves, sorūpa-dhyāṇam kiḷamba-k. Sorūpa-dhyāṇam, sorūpa means our own real nature, ourself, in other words, what we actually are. Dhyāṇam means meditation, contemplation. So sorūpa-dhyāṇam means contemplation on our real nature, or in other words, self-attentiveness. Just being aware, being attentively aware of ourself is sorūpa-dhyāṇa. Kiḷamba-k. Kiḷamba means to start, originate, rise, increase. Here it's used in the sense of increase. So as the sorūpa-dhyāṇa, as the self-attentiveness increases and increases, aṛindu-viḍum. Avai-yāvum, aṛindu-viḍum. So the avai-yāvum means all of them, meaning all of the viṣaya-vāsaṇas, will be destroyed. So the whole sentence is, toṉḍṛutoṭṭu varugiṉḍṛa viṣaya-vāsaṉaigaḻ, aḷavaṭṭṛaṉavāy kaḍal-alaigaḻ pol toṉṭṛiṉum, avai-yāvum sorūpa-dhyāṇam kiḷamba-k aṛindu-viḍum. Even though viṣaya-vāsaṇas, which come from time immemorial, rise in countless numbers like ocean waves, they will all be destroyed when sorūpa-dhyāṇa increases and increases. When he says they rise, how do they rise? They rise as thoughts or as phenomena. According to Bhagavan, all phenomena, we see so many objects of the world, and we take these all to be physical phenomena, as they seem to be. But just like in dream, we see so many, what seem to be physical phenomena in dreams, they seem to be, everything that we see in the dream seems to be outside ourselves, existing independently of ourselves. But when we wake up, we realize it was all our own thoughts, it was our own mental fabrication, a figment of our imagination, everything that we saw in the dream. According to Bhagavan, everything, all phenomena are just a figment of our imagination. All phenomena, according to Bhagavan, are just thoughts. In other words, all phenomena are mental phenomena. Because Bhagavan uses the term thought in a very broad sense to mean any kind of mental phenomena. So according to Bhagavan, all phenomena are mental phenomena, and therefore what he calls thoughts. And the seeds that rise, that appear as these phenomena, are viṣaya-vāsaṇas. That is, viṣayas, phenomena, don't exist independent of ourselves. It's because of our desire to be aware of them that they appear. The dream, nothing that we see in a dream exists independent of ourselves. Why does the dream appear? Because we want to be going outwards, to be experiencing viṣaya. So the whole of our dream is nothing but a projection of our viṣaya-vāsaṇas. According to Bhagavan, this is all just a dream. It's all just a projection of our viṣaya-vāsaṇas. So when he says they appear in countless numbers, like ocean waves, how do they appear? They appear as all this. They're all phenomena, all thoughts. So they rise as thoughts. They will all be destroyed when sorūpa-dhyāṇa increases and increases. What does he mean by increases and increases? It not only means increase in duration, like Bhagavan says in that verse of Aksharam, we have to try and see ourselves daily, constantly. So it increases in terms of the duration, but more important than the duration of the self-attentiveness is the depth and intensity of the self-attentiveness. But actually, we don't need to be self-attentive for a long time. We just need one moment of perfect self-attentiveness, one moment of turning a full 180 degrees back towards ourselves. Turning 180 degrees, again, it's metaphorical, figurative, but it's as if when we're facing outwards, we are aware of phenomena. To the extent that we turn back towards ourselves, we are more aware of ourselves and less aware of phenomena. When we turn the full 180 degrees to face ourselves alone, we are not at all aware of any phenomena, we're aware of ourselves alone. Just one moment of being aware of ourselves alone, the ego will be destroyed, because when we're aware of ourselves alone, we'll be aware of ourselves as we actually are, and what we call ego or mind is nothing but a wrong awareness of ourselves. We're aware of ourselves as this body, as this person. So that wrong awareness, or our awareness of ourselves as something other than what we actually are, that is what is called ego. So that will be destroyed when we're just one moment of being aware of ourselves as we actually are. So when he says increases and increases, though it also means increases in duration, more importantly, increases in depth and intensity. That is, the more we turn towards, instead of turning 10 degrees, 20 degrees, 30 degrees, the more we turn 150, 160, 170, the more we are able to turn within, the more the viṣaya-vāsaṇas will be destroyed. How do we turn within? We cannot, so long as we have strong desires to be aware of other things, we cannot turn within. So we are able to turn within to the extent that we have a liking to do so. Instead of viṣaya-vāsaṇa, we need sattva-vāsaṇa. Sattva-vāsaṇa means the liking just to be as we are. And how are we? We are just pure awareness. So the liking to be aware of ourselves alone is what is called sattva-vāsaṇa. It's also called swapma-bhakti, love for our own self. So to the extent that we have that love to know what we actually are, to be aware of ourselves alone, to that extent we're able to turn within. So it is ultimately only by love that we can overcome desire. Because both desire is nothing but a distorted form of love. Love is our real nature. Our real nature is to have infinite love for ourselves. Because we are infinite happiness, we cannot but love ourselves. But because we mistake happiness as coming from external things, we get desire for those things. So the desire is nothing but a distortion of the pure love that we actually are. So by rekindling the love for ourselves, by rekindling that love to be aware of nothing other than ourselves, which we are doing by trying to turn our attention within, we are cultivating, feeding, nourishing our swapma-bhakti, our love to be aware of ourselves, and thereby we are weakening the liking to be aware of anything else. That weakening of the liking to be aware of other things is what Bhagavan calls vairagya. And in the next paragraph, he defines vairagya, not attending to what is anya, not attending to anything other than ourselves, is vairagya, or nirāsai. Nirāsai means freedom from desire. So the sorūpa-dhyāṇa will increase and increase to the extent that we cultivate this love to turn within, and thereby, proportional to a love to turn within is the vairagya, the freedom from desire to be aware of other things. So that's why I said this is such an important paragraph, because here Bhagavan is talking about the very crux of the actual practice. Why the practice seems to be difficult, why we all struggle. Because of our viṣaya-vāsaṇas, because of our viṣaya-vāsaṇas are not anything. People sometimes say, "Oh, I can't help it. It's because of my vasanas." What are the vasanas? They are our own desires, our own liking. So we have cultivated this liking to be aware of other things. We now have to cultivate the opposite liking, the love to be aware of ourselves. So. Here Bhagavan deals with the very crux of matter. The ego rises. Why? Because of its liking to be aware of things other than itself. So those are the viṣaya-vāsaṇas. They are the fuel that gives rise to the ego. Though, of course, the viṣaya-vāsaṇas don't exist independent of the ego. Whose vasanas are they? Whose desires are they? Their own ego's desires. So they arise along with ego, but it's the ego's liking to be aware of other things that prompt it to continue rising. So we need to replace that liking to be aware of other things with the love to be aware of ourselves. How to do so? By constantly trying to turn our attention within. Turning within constantly, trying to see what we actually are. That is the secret, and that is the way to, by that we cultivate the love to know ourselves, and we weaken the hold that these vasanas have on us. Actually, we talk about vasanas having a hold on us. It's really we are holding on to the vasanas. They are, the vasanas themselves are jada. They're just desires have no awareness of their own. It's we who have desire. We give, what gives the vasanas so much strength? We are the ones who give it strength. But the more we attend to things other than ourselves, we are feeding our vasanas. So the more we try to attend to ourselves, the more we are feeding the sat vasana and weakening the viṣaya-vāsaṇas. Every moment we have a choice. Do we attend to things other than ourselves, or do we attend to ourselves? When we attend to things other than ourselves, we are feeding the viṣaya-vāsaṇas. When we choose to attend to ourselves, we are feeding the sat vasana, the swapna bhakti, and weakening the viṣaya-vāsaṇas. So it's all a matter of what do we want. If we really want to know ourselves, we will persevere in this practice. And by persevering in this practice, that love to know ourselves will increase and increase, and the vasanas which take our mind away from ourselves will get weaker and weaker. And in the next two sentences, he gives us assurances. Well, in the third sentence he gives an assurance. The second sentence, a bit more indirectly, he gives us an assurance. Attaṉai vasaṉaigaḷum oḍuṅgi sorūpa-māttiram-āy irukka muḍiyumā. That's a question. In Tamil, sometimes inverted commas are used, but inverted commas are not natural to Tamil. Questions and quotations can be formed just by within the Tamil language without using inverted commas. So sometimes Bhagavan uses, sometimes he doesn't. But if we were to write it in English, we would write this in inverted commas, because it's a question within the whole sentence. Attaṉai vasaṇaigaḻam means so many vasanas. Oḍuṅgi. Oḍuṅgi means ceasing, subsiding, or being dissolved. So many vasanas ceasing. Sorūpa-māttiram-āy irukka muḍiyumā. Is it possible to be as swarupa alone? Is it possible to be what we actually are? In order for us to be what we actually are, all the vasanas have to cease, is the implication. So only when the vasanas cease, so this attaṉai vasaṇaigaḻum oḍuṅgi is an adverbial clause, which the implication is that's a prerequisite for us to be as swarupa alone. So this is a question: is it possible for us to be as swarupa alone with all these vasanas subsiding? In other words, is it possible for us to overcome all these vasanas and just be as we actually are? That's the question. Then he says, v-eṉṉum it's a relative participle, which indicates that all that goes before that is a quotation, well, not exactly a quotation, and such a, he says, v-eṉṉum sandēha ninevugaḻ. Sandēha means doubt, ninevu means thought. So sandēha ninevu means a doubt thought or a doubting thought. So the doubting thought is it possible to be only as myself, all these vasanas ceasing? Then he says, v-eṉṉum sandēha ninevu, that means to this sandēha ninevu, irum-koḍirāmal, without giving room to this thought. So we shouldn't give, it is a daunting task we've undertaken. From time immemorial, we've cultivated all these vasanas, all these likings to be aware of things other than ourselves. They're constantly dragging our mind outwards. It seems a hugely daunting task to overcome all of them and just to remain as we actually are. But Bhagavan says we shouldn't even give room to the thought, but whether it's possible or not to do so. Without giving room to a doubting thought, is it possible to remain as Swarupa alone, with all these vasanas ceasing, subsiding, without giving room to that? Then the main clause is sorūpa-dhyāṇattai viḍā-p-piḍiyāy v-eṉṉum. This is expressed in a very, in a very strong manner. Bhagavan expresses this. Sorūpa-dhyāna, as we saw, that means self-attentiveness. Viḍā-p-piḍiyāy. Pidi means to hold. Vidu means to leave. Viḍā-p-piḍi means unleavingly holding. That's tenaciously holding. Viḍā-p-piḍiyāy, all that is an adverb. The adverb is formed of holding without leaving. So, and then the same verb he uses again, pidika v-eṉṇum. Here, pidika is infinitive form of pidi, which means to hold. So it is necessary to grasp or to cling tenaciously to self-attentiveness. It's very difficult to express how emphatic this term viḍā-p-piḍiyāy is in English. It means, vidā means without leaving, holding so firmly without leaving. v-eṉṇum means it is necessary. So without giving room to this doubting thought, whether it's possible to destroy all these viṣaya-vāsanas and to be just as we are, we need to, it's necessary to cling tenaciously to sorūpa-dhyāna. Indirectly, Bhagavan is giving us an assurance here. If we persevere in this practice, if we cling as firmly as we can to sorūpa-dhyāna, then surely it is possible. He doesn't say so here, but the implication is it's possible. He makes it very clear in the next sentence that it is possible. As I say, it's very difficult to convey the force of the words in Tamil, but the closest I can come to express it in English is necessary to cling tenaciously to self-attentiveness.
Viḍā-p-piḍiyāy is the meaning, like the example.
Yes.
Y-aṛudu or self-determination?
Yes. Well, we have to be tenacious, yes. But I mean, we can be tenacious only to the extent that we have vairagya. But the problem is we all start off on this path without that vairagya. We have so much liking to the world, so we've got this huge pile of viṣaya-vāsanas constantly dragging us outwards, very, very little liking to turn within. Like Bhagavan says in another verse of Aksharamlai, Nesa milenakun, to me who had no love, un-āsaya-kātanai, you showed me that desire for you. That is, Bhagavan has given us at least a little liking, a little desire for him in our heart. And he ends that saying, Mosun sayadaru, do not cheat me. So Bhagavan will not cheat us. It's Bhagavan who's given us this little liking to start on this path. So he's such a skillful gardener. If he plants a seed, he's not going to leave that garden. Even though we may leave him, he is viḍā-p-piḍiyāy. He's tenaciously taking care of that seed of love that he's sown in our heart, and he will see that it blossoms into a full-grown plant that will, sometimes an analogy is given a seed, but the seed of a banyan tree that falls in the crack of a rock. It will grow into banyan tree, finally it will split the whole rock. So such is this seed of love Bhagavan has sown in our heart. It may be a tiny little seed, but it will destroy all this fabrication, the root of which is ego. So we start off with very little love to turn within, and with a huge amount of desire to go outwards. But this is like a snowballing process. If we start little by little, Sanai Sanai Uparamet, it said in Gita, Bhagavan translated that, Mella Mella Chittate Amabil Saitidika. We have to slowly, gradually, gently approach this path. But if we do so with perseverance, we will certainly succeed. So it's, when a snowball begins rolling down a hill, at first it's very small and it's rolling slowly. As it gathers more and more snow, it becomes heavier, it picks up momentum. And finally it rushes down the hill at great speed. So we start off on this path, making slow, small steps. But the more we follow this path, the more it will gain momentum. The more the impetus to turn within will increase, and the impetus to turn outwards will decrease.
Slowly catching monkey.
Yes. So the whole of this second sentence is attaṉai vasaṉaigaḻum oḍuṅgi sorūpa-māttiram-āy irukka muḍiyumā v-eṉṉum sandēha nenevukku idum koḍāmal sorūpa-dhyāṉattai viḍā-p-piḍiyāy-p without giving room even to the doubting thought, with so many vasanas ceasing, is it possible to remain only a swarupa, my own real nature? It is necessary to cling tenaciously to sorūpa-dhyāna, self-attentiveness. Then in the third sentence, this is the sentence where he gives a very, very clear assurance, an assurance that is implied in the second sentence, but it's stated more explicitly in the third sentence. Oruvan evelo papiyai irundālam. Oruvan means one, or a person, however great a sinner one may be or a person may be. Evelo means to what extent or however much. Papiyai irundālam, though one may be however much a sinner. So however great a sinner one may be is the implication. Nāṉ papiyai eppaḍi kaḍaittēṟa-p. Again, Bhagavan is here, he actually used inverted commas. Right? It's similar to, he's asking a question within the sentence. The sentence, Nāṉ papiyai I am a sinner. But he doesn't, if he says Nāṉ papiyai means I am a sinner, he said papiyai. That final A gives the sense of lamenting. Oh, I'm such a great sinner. I'm a sinner. Eppaḍi kaḍaittēṟa-p. Kaḍai means a limit, or it can also mean like the limit of a river is the banks of a river. Kaḍaittu means the locative case of kaḍai. Āra means to rise. So it's an idiom that means to be saved, but literally it means how can I rise above the limit, or how can I climb up the bank? Often it's talked of that moksha is the other side of the other bank of the river. We've got to cross the river of samsara to reach the other bank. So that's what's alluded to here. So how are we going to be saved? When I'm such a great sinner, how am I going to be saved? Is the question. And then Bhagavan says, Endru again is, like ennum in the previous sentence was a relative participle indicating a quotation. This is an adverbial participle indicating a quotation. Endru engi. Engi means yearning, lamenting. Aṛindu-viḍum. Without lamenting and weeping. That means. Aṛindu means to weeping. Aṛindu-koṇḍirāmal gives a sense of continuously weeping, or weeping to oneself. Without constantly lamenting and weeping to oneself in such a way. Tān papi ennum ennateum avai-yāvum. If one completely rejects or completely gives up that thought that one is a sinner, that sorūpa-dhyāṇattil uru-p-paḍuvāṉ irundāl. If one is ukum means to be very steadfast or zealous. Ukum-ulavāṇai means one. Ukum-ulavan is one who has that zealousness, that steadfastness. Ukum-ulavāṇai irundāl means if one is one who has such ukum, such zealousness. So if one is steadfast in sorūpa-dhyāṇa, sorūpa-dhyāṇattil ukum, the steadfastness in sorūpa-dhyāṇa, if one has such steadfastness, nityamai uru-p-paḍuvāṉ, he will certainly be reformed. Uru-p-paḍuvāṉ is uru means form, uru-padu means to be formed. It implies here to be reformed or to be transformed. Uru can also stand for swarupa. So one will become swarupa. One will certainly, the implication is one will be transformed from this ego that we now seem to be into our real nature. Bhagavan often uses very simple words, but we have to read behind the word to understand what he's alluding to. Uru-p-paḍuvāṉ can also mean, like if a sinner is reformed and turns to good ways, he's been reformed. In that sense, it's often used. But here, Bhagavan isn't talking about we'll become a good person, because our aim isn't to be a person at all. The awareness I am a person itself is the root of all the problems. Why we think we're a sinner? Because we take ourselves to be this person. Bhagavan doesn't want us to even give room to that thought, I'm a sinner. Because in order to give room to the thought, I am a sinner, we first have to give room to the thought, I am this person. Because who's doing the sins? Sins are through body, speech, and mind. We do so many bad things. But who is it? It's the ego that rises and says, I am this body, speech, and mind. I am doing these actions. So Bhagavan doesn't even want us to give room to this thought that we are a sinner. Without giving room to that thought, if we are steadfast in clinging firmly to self-attentiveness, we will certainly be reformed. That is, we won't only become a good person, we will become no person at all. We will merge back in the person that we seem to be. Who is it? It's the ego who says, I am this person. That ego, which is the root of this person, will itself dissolve back into its source. That is what Bhagavan means here by uru-p-paḍuvāṉ. And he says, avai-yāvum. Nityam means certainly. So he's giving a very strong assurance here. We will certainly be reformed. So all that Bhagavan asks us to do, very, very simple thing. Constantly we should be trying to turn our attention within to see what we actually are. If we persevere in that, that's what Bhagavan calls sorūpa-dhyāṉattai, viḍā-p-piḍiyāy-p, that is pidital, that is clinging tenaciously to self-attentiveness. This is the simple medicine Bhagavan has given us. But though it's such a simple medicine, this is the medicine that will solve all problems. So all problems arise because we rise as ego. In sleep, we have no problems. But in waking and dream, we rise as ego. We rise as ego by projecting and experiencing ourselves as a person, a body. And then through the five senses of this body, we project this world. All these problems arise because we rise as ego. And what is the fuel that prompts us to continue rising again and again and again? It's our viṣaya-vāsaṇas. So in order to cease rising as ego, merge back into our source, our viṣaya-vāsaṇas have to be weakened to a very considerable extent. In order to weaken them, the means is persistent practice of self-attentiveness. This is the sum and substance of all of Bhagavan's teachings. And just like what makes us rise and go outwards, viṣaya-vāsaṇas, rising and going outwards is called pravritti. Pravritti is fed by these viṣaya-vāsaṇas. Turning back within and subsiding back into our source is called nivritti. It's the love to rise and go outwards, which is giving rise to this pravritti. We must we can overcome that only by an equal and opposite love, or a still greater love, to turn back within. When our love to be aware of ourselves is greater than our desire to go outwards, we will turn back within, and the ego, which is the root of all these vasanas, will be destroyed. When ego is destroyed, that's vasaṇaksha. The vasanas are destroyed along with it. We cannot destroy all the vasanas so long as we rise as ego. The very nature of ego is to have vasanas. So the very nature of the ego, Bhagavan says, the ego comes into existence. How? Uru-p-paḍuvāṉ. By grasping form, it comes into existence. Uru-p-paḍuvāṉ. Grasping form, it stands. Uru-p-paḍuvāṉ. By grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes. This is all verse 25 of uru-p-paḍuvāṉ. So this is how the ego comes into existence, by grasping things other than itself. So desire is the very nature of ego. So you cannot have a desireless ego. When the desires are weakened to a sufficient extent, so when the desires become weaker than our love to turn within, we will turn within, ego will be destroyed, and all its remaining viṣaya-vāsanas will be destroyed along with it. So this is a very, very simple path Bhagavan has taught us, but in order to follow it, we need great love, because only by love we will persevere in this path. There are so many pleasures we can achieve in this world relatively simply. We can find so many ways of experiencing pleasure in this world. But to experience the infinite happiness that we actually are, we need all-consuming, overwhelming love to be aware of ourselves alone, to cease being aware of anything else. So all this is what Bhagavan alludes to in this paragraph. And next month we'll deal with the 11th paragraph, in which he continues this theme, talking about viṣaya-vāsanas.
Questions?
Can I just say one more thing before? One thing I forgot to say is in this third sentence, Bhagavan brings in about sin. About being he doesn't mention sin directly, he mentions papi, means a sinner. What is the connection between sin and the viṣaya-vāsaṇas? What is a sin is basically any selfish action, any action that we do for the sake of I, me, or mine, without considering the desires of other people, right? Without considering the harm that we may be doing to other people or other living beings. What prompts us to do any kind of sin is our own desire, our desire for I, me, and mine, for oneself, selfish action, in other words. All these the desires that give rise to selfish actions are viṣaya-vāsaṇas. It's because we want to gain pleasure for ourselves, irrespective of whatever harm it may be causing to others, whether other human beings or non-human beings, any living being. If we're doing actions for our own pleasure, without unconcerned about the harm that we may be doing to others, that is a sin. That is all driven by viṣaya-vāsaṇas. So, by following Bhagavan's path, by rooting out, by weakening the hold that viṣaya-vāsaṇas have on us, we do become a better person. If we are still doing very sinful actions, that means our mind is still very impure, we still have very strong, our desires are so strong it blinds us to the needs and concerns of others. Becoming a better person is a byproduct of following Bhagavan's path, but that's of course not our aim. Our aim isn't to be a good person, our aim is to eradicate the ego that rises and says, I am this person.
Would it be right in thinking that the right side of the chest is important in this? If I'm talking about self-attention, is it right to think one can use the right side of the chest as the direction of yourself?
What is the ego? The ego is the false awareness, I am this body. It is only for the right, when we talk about the right side of the chest, which body are we talking about? Are we talking about this waking body or the body which we experience as I in dream? The body itself is unreal, so any place in the body is unreal. But when the ego rises, it projects a body, and then it feels itself, this body is I, and where am I located in the body? All this is the reason why Bhagavan mentioned this right side of the chest. It doesn't have any spiritual significance, but there were some of Bhagavan's followers were not actually following his, or some of Bhagavan's devotees, let's say, were not actually following his path of self-investigation. They were following the path of yoga. So when Bhagavan often used the word heart as a synonym for oneself. Heart means what is the center. What is the center? Our own real nature is the center of everything. The center of the ego is Swarupa, our own real nature. Atma Swarupa is the center of ego. Ego is the center of the will. The will is the center of the intellect. The intellect is the center of the mind. The mind is the center of the life. The life is the center of the body. So the very core of everything is our real nature. The body is one of the outer, they're called sheaths, panchakosha, means 5 sheaths. Sheaths in the sense of coverings. Why it's called like that? Because when we turn inwards, body, first when we talk about we talk about, we are thinking in terms of the body. The world is out there, everything else is in the body. What is in the body? There's life in the body. What is it that motivates it? What is it that drives the life? It is mind. So body is annamaya kosha. life is pranamaya kosha, mind is manomaya kosha. What is the mind? Is the outer is itself an outer shell. Within the mind there's an intellect, but judges, but discriminates. And what is it that drives the intellect? It's our will, which is why often our judgments are wrong. Because of our desire to experience happiness in external things, we think these external things are good. We think these things are, so our intellect is clouded by our will. So the will is the driving force behind the intellect. But whose will is it? It's the ego's will. So all these 5 sheaths are covering the ego, so to speak. But the ego itself is not what we actually are, because within the ego is what? It's chit, jada, granti. The ego actually has no existence. If you take 2 pieces of string and tangle them together, they form a knot. Does the knot have any existence independent of the 2 pieces of string? No. It's something that is formed by the entanglement of the 2 pieces of string. So the ego has no real existence. But in this case, there are 2 strings. One string is the chit, the self-awareness, which is our real nature. The other string is jada. That means all these 5 sheaths are jada, according to Bhagavan. They're non-aware. So, but these 5 sheaths, they don't exist independent of the ego. So the ego is a mixture of reality and unreality. The real element of ego is chit, the awareness, I am. The unreal aspect of ego is all these sheaths that it takes itself to be. But these sheaths don't exist independent of it. Only when the ego arises, everything else arises. So how can a place in the body, since the body arises, is a projection of the ego, how can a place in the body be the real location of our real nature? But some people there were a group of devotees of Bhagavan whose aim was not moksha. Their aim was gaining siddhis. Not what they were devoted to Bhagavan because they understood Bhagavan is Shiva himself, who's appeared in human form. So except they didn't even want to admit him he was Shiva. They said he's Subramanya, but that's another story. But anyway, they were not intent on annihilating the ego. They wanted to retain their individuality, attain power, to reform the world and rectify the world and everything. They had great concern about the world. Bhagavan said, leave the world alone. He who's created the world knows how to look after it. But they had ambitions of their own. And so they were following yoga marga, where they thought by mantras and other means, they would be able to gain shakti and siddhis. So their mind was so extroverted, when Bhagavan talked about the heart, they immediately asked, where in the body is the heart? Bhagavan said, heart is your real nature. But they insisted, is it the same as the Anahata chakra? Then because of their persistence, Bhagavan finally said, it is 2 digits to the right from the center of the chest. Why? Because now we experience this whole body as I. But if Bhagavan used to give an example, if a schoolboy says, I will run and fetch the mail, he doesn't point at his legs and say, I will run. He says, I will run and fetch the mail. If someone asks, who can do this sum correctly? I can do the sum correctly. He doesn't say, I can do the sum correctly. We always point to ourselves here, because this is what we experience. When we experience ourselves as a body, this is what we experience as a center. We can observe it in so many ways. For example, if you're walking along the street, and suddenly a car honks its horn behind you, or suddenly there's a big explosion, or a brass band starts playing, you suddenly get a shock, you can feel it here. This is something anyone can observe. So, relative to the body, this is the center. But the body is not I. So meditating here we are attending to something other than ourselves. That's why Bhagavan said, when in talk somewhere, someone asked Bhagavan, is meditation to be on the right side of the chest? Bhagavan said meditation shouldn't be on the right or the left. Meditation should be on oneself, on I am alone. So it has no spiritual significance at all. But when Bhagavan said, this is the 2 digits right from the center of the chest, they then asked, is there any why is it not mentioned in any scripture? Is there any scriptural authority for it? Bhagavan said, you don't need scriptural authority for it. Anyone can experience it. Have a shock and you'll feel it there. But they still wanted some scripture. Later, Bhagavan found some Malayali translation of Ashtanga Hridayam, which is a standard work of Ayurveda, and in that is described within the chest there are 6 things and different colors, and one of them is like a lotus that's turned upside down, and that is the heart, it said. So Bhagavan translated those verses into Tamil to say, see, it is there in scripture. But in Upadesha Manjari, when there's a question, when Natyananda asked Bhagavan about it, and Bhagavan refers to those 2 verses and says, though the question asked by Natyananda is, what is the nature of the heart? And Bhagavan says, though the Srutis, the scriptures, describe the heart in this way, and he quotes those 2 verses, in Paramattattil, in Paramata, Hridayam Indra Sokku, for the word, the meaning of the word Hridaya, Anmave, is oneself alone. Adu Sat Chit Anandam, Nityam Purnam, v-eṉṉum, ilakkana-galal, Devaharik. So that is, it is Sat, Chit, Ananda, Nitya, that means eternal, Purna, whole. So how can that eternal and infinite Satchidananda, Purna means the whole, the totality. How can that totality, which is Satchidananda and which is ever existing, be a little place in this transient ephemeral body, which appears in waking, disappears in dream and sleep? In sleep, in dream, some other body appears as I. And in dream, if you have a sudden shock, you'll feel it in the right side of the chest. But that's the right side of that body. So that cannot be what we actually are. So because of their unwillingness to, this is what this paragraph is all about willingness. Are we willing to turn within or not? Turning within doesn't mean turning within the body. It means turning back towards that which is, turning back towards the seer. The body is something perceived by us. Who is the perceiver? That perceiver is the ego. Within the ego, the real element of ego, the awareness in the ego, in the Chitta-granthi, that is what we actually are. That is what we need to turn towards. So we need to turn away from the body. We need to, Bhagavan said, leaving the body like a corpse. That means when you leave a corpse, when the body dies, are we aware of it? No, we cease to be aware of it. So when Bhagavan said leaving the body like a corpse, means leaving it as we would be, just as we would be totally unaware of the body once the body dies. Just like when the body dies, just like waking up from, or just like a dream coming to an end. After the dream comes to an end, are we still aware of that dream body? No. So we should be totally we should turn our attention away from this body, away from all phenomena, back towards ourselves. So this right-hand side of the chest has, as far as self-investigation is concerned, it has no relevance whatsoever. for little children who wanted to play their little games trying to acquire Shakti and Siddhis, which Bhagavan constantly told them these are all illusory. They still were intent on, they still had their worldly ambitions. So Bhagavan, just like when children brought fireworks for Deepawali and wouldn't let off their fireworks until Bhagavan let off, Bhagavan played along with the children. So he played along with these learned scholars who actually in terms of spirituality were just children. Yes?
Is it that all outward phenomena that we give our attention to are unreal?
All phenomena are outward. What Bhagavan means by out and in, we ourself alone are in. Everything that appears and disappears is outside. So all phenomena are outward. They're all wholly unreal. Because when do they appear? They're only when we rise as ego they appear. In waking and dream we're aware of phenomena. Where are all these phenomena in sleep? There are no phenomena in sleep because there's no ego there.
Is self a phenomenon?
What do you mean by yourself? What you actually are is not a phenomena, but what you now seem to be is a phenomenon. When we rise as ego, we always experience ourselves as a body. By the term body, Bhagavan doesn't mean just this physical body. All the 5 sheaths are the body. That is, we never experience a dead body as ourself. So it's always a living body. That's the physical form is the annamaya kosha, the outer sheath. The next sheath is the pranamaya kosha, the life, the breath and the heartbeat and all these things. They're all the life. Metaphorically within that, I mean, they're actually all one and the same thing, but metaphorically within that is mind. Within mind is intellect. Within intellect is will. These 5 make up the person we seem to be. But none of these are what we actually are. But as ego, we always experience ourselves as a body consisting of these 5 sheaths. In other words, we experience ourselves as a person. That Bhagavan said, the ego is nothing but that false self-awareness, I am this body.
It always comes back to, for me, what is this self-attentiveness?
Right, okay, well, you are that. Well, that is why Bhagavan called this practice of self-attentiveness the investigation, who am I? What is this I? That is what we are, it's an investigation, we have to find that out. In any investigation, how do scientists, if they want to investigate some phenomenon, how do they investigate it? They use, the basic tool is observation. If it's something far away, some galaxies millions of light years away, they need very powerful telescopes, they need so many instruments. But even through those instruments, what are they doing? They're observing. If they're looking at tiny, minute things, if they've got this thing they got in Switzerland, that accelerator that sends, they do all sorts of, it's all observation. They're observing, they're setting up certain conditions in order to observe. So observation is the basic tool of investigation. So now we want to investigate to find out what we are. The neuroscientists think they're making research on consciousness by observing the brain and seeing correlation between activity in the brain and what a person is experiencing. And therefore they think the consciousness is coming out of the brain. But who is aware of both the brain and it's all in awareness. And the awareness that is aware of things other than itself is mind. But that what is the light that illumines the mind? The mind is the light that illumines the world. But the awareness that is called mind is what makes the world known. But what is the awareness that illumines that awareness? That is the pure self-awareness that we actually are. That is what we need to investigate by turning our attention back within. So, if I could answer the question, well, if Bhagavan could answer the question for us, what is the I, then all our problems will be over. But we each have to find the answer to ourselves by looking within ourselves. Because any answer that can be given in words is just a description. Words are great for describing phenomena. I can say this pillar is tall, it's white, it's got 3 lights on it. Words are great for that. But can you explain what it is? Can you tell me what self-awareness is? Can you describe it in words? We all know, when we talk about self-awareness, we know what we're talking about, but it's not something that you can describe. It's beyond words. So to know what, now we are aware, we are always aware of ourselves, but now we are aware, our self-awareness is mixed up with awareness of other things. I am aware of myself as I am Michael. What is real in that is I am. My existence, my awareness is real. But I have mixed that along with this, Michael is the name of this body, which was born a few years ago and is going to be dead in a few years' time. So is this what I actually am? It's not only it was born some years ago and was going to die some years hence, it's with me when? Only in this waking state. In dream I'm not aware of this body, some other body I experience as I. In sleep I'm not aware of any body at all. So can any of these bodies be what I actually am? I cannot be anything, but if I'm aware of myself in the absence of something, that something cannot be what I actually am. The only thing that we are constantly aware of in all the 3 states is the basic self-awareness. That is what we need to find by keen observation. By trying to observe this self-awareness, we are separating ourselves from the adjuncts, from all these things that we now take ourselves to be, this body, life, mind, intellect, will, all these things that now seem to be ourselves. By trying to attend to ourself alone, we are separating ourselves from these things. Often when scientists want to do research on something, if there's a plant that has it's known this plant has a medicinal property, the scientists want to find out what is the active ingredient, what is actually the element in this plant that has that. So they try and isolate that element. If they are trying to do some other type of experiment, there may be so many variables. When there are many variables, they can't tell which variable is accounting for whatever they observe. So they have to try and isolate and have it so they produce a condition where there's only one variable. Then they can say what is the effect of that variable. So it's always by separating. So now we have to separate ourselves from all that we seem to be. How do we separate ourselves? We attach ourselves to these things by turning our attention outwards, away from ourselves. By turning our attention back towards ourselves, we separate ourselves. This is what is called, one term that is used in Sanskrit is drik, drisya, viveka. Drik means the perceiver, the seer. Drisya means what is perceived. We cannot be anything perceived, because what is perceived appears and disappears. So we need to separate the perceiver from the perceived. And by trying to separate the perceiver from that is by attending to the perceiver alone, we separate ourselves from what is perceived. This is as far as we can explain in words. But words have their limitations. Beyond this, even Bhagavan said, nobody can, if the way we're objective, it can be shown by someone else. But it's not objective. So we've each got to find the way into our own heart, our own home.
My question was regarding solipsism in view of Bhagavan's teachings.
Yes.
And also I wanted you to speak about maybe, did he ever speak of pralaya? Because again, apparent individuals, once you reach a certain number, but the mind subsides. Is there a distribution of the so-called universe?
Which shall I start with? Let's start with pralaya. Yes, there is a dissolution. Every night when you go to sleep, there is dissolution. And a fresh cycle begins the next day. So, in scriptures are addressed to people at many different levels. Bhagavan's path is the ultimate path. It is not everyone is not yet ready for it. It's all a matter of willingness. Are we willing to surrender ourselves? Most people still have strong viṣaya-vāsaṇas. So long as our viṣaya-vāsaṇas are strong, we'll be unwilling to let go. And Bhagavan's path is all about letting go. Bhagavan says in verse 26 of uru-p-paḍuvāṉ, if ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. If ego does not exist, everything does not exist. Ego itself is everything. Therefore, investigating what it is giving up everything. So until we are ready to give up everything, until we are ready to let go of everything, we will not be willing to follow this path of self-investigation and self-surrender that Bhagavan taught us. Which is fine. Everyone is at there. The spiritual path is a journey. And it's a journey that covers, from the hypothetical time when the ego first arose, up to the time when finally it is dissolved. It is a long journey. And we go through we begin by being very selfishness, believing might is right, and having no morals or anything. Slowly, we experience the fruits of our karmas, we understand, and we slowly, by the grace, slowly our mind is purified, and we come to the path of bhakti, and on the path of bhakti, this purification of our mind is speeded up, and bhakti begins with what is not actually real bhakti, but it is worshipping God for the sake of what we expect to get from God. That eventually evolves into pure love of God for the sake of God alone, not for the sake of what we expect to get from God. As Sarvam says in one of his songs, Kodu tavam perida and aladinda kodu poru perida. Which is greater, the giver or these things for the giver? So people finally come to that understanding. But if God is so gracious to give me whatever I ask for, He is surely greater than all that He is giving me. So our love matures from love for the things we expect to get from God to love for God Himself. But we still take God to be other than ourselves. And so we worship God, and we may even see visions of God or whatever, but we're still not satisfied. Until we come to the point where we're ready to surrender ourselves, then God appears as Guru and says, I don't exist outside, I am within you. I am the I within you. To know me, you have to know yourself. And so we come to this path of self-investigation, and we can surrender by the path of bhakti. By bhakti, I don't mean viṣaya bhakti, but devotion to things that we get from God, but love for God alone. On that path, we are slowly surrendering our will to the will of God. Like Bhagavan says, ninishtam, your will is my will. Imbu adueku, that is happiness for me. So this is on the path of dualistic devotion, where we still take God to be other than ourselves. We can surrender our will, but in order for our surrender to be complete, we have to surrender the ego itself. And in order to surrender the ego itself, since ego is nothing but a wrong awareness of ourself, and awareness of ourself is something other than what we actually are, we can eradicate ego only by being aware of ourselves as we actually are. So surrender can be completed only by vichara, only by self-investigation, only by turning our attention within to see what we actually are. When we see what we actually are, that itself is giving up the ego. So this is the path. It's a long process of that we all go through. Now we are at the stage where at least we are making the first little steps on this path of self-investigation and complete self-surrender. At least Bhagavan has put in our heart that little bit of interest, that little bit of liking to follow this path and to attain the goal of egolessness that he has taught us is alone the true goal of all spiritual paths. So that is where we stand now. So, because we have been through so many different stages of development, the different stages of development, different types of teachings are appropriate. So, for some people it's appropriate to say the world was created by God in 7 days, and it all started some 3,000 years before Christ, and then Christ came as the Savior. For some people that's the appropriate thing to believe. It's helping them on their journey from that state. Other people, other types of beliefs are appropriate. So Hinduism is a big family. It's not one religion. It's a family of religions, in the sense that it is catering for people at many different stages of development, and people also of many different tastes. For some people are not attracted to this path of bhakti. I want to do something. I want enlightenment. I must do something to get enlightenment. So for such people, this yoga marga is more suitable. For people with that strong sense of doership, that path is suitable. So there are different paths to suit different people according to different temperaments and according to different stages of spiritual development. So a lot of what is taught in scriptures of any religion are appropriate for certain people at a certain stage. But we have to go beyond all these beliefs. According to Bhagavan, Bhagavan often talked about, for example, for people who were very much concerned about all the problems in the world, all the injustices in the world, and who wanted to do something to improve the world, Bhagavan used to say, he who has created the world knows how to look after it. Leave it to him. Because that's the appropriate teaching for most people at that stage. But for people who are who are further along the path, he said, the world appears, when the ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. Why should we believe that anything exists independent of our perception of it? We believe generally, but when we go to sleep, this world continues. And when we wake up in the morning, we find, we turn on the news, we hear, or we open the internet and we see such and such things have happened overnight. There was a terrorist attack here, or there was a cyclone there, or something has happened. So we think the world is continuing even when we are not there to look at it. But according to Bhagavan, this is all just a dream. So all that happened, supposedly happened when we were asleep, that comes into existence only when we wake up. So Bhagavan says nothing actually exists independent of our perception of it, just like in a dream. The dream only exists when we're perceiving it. When we're not perceiving it, when the dream comes to an end, we don't think that dream world is continuing. We don't worry about our relatives who we left behind in our dream, because we know it was just our own mental fabrication. According to Bhagavan, all of this is our mental fabrication. So when we come to understand this idea of the different yugas, and then the ultimate pralaya, and then it's all coming back again, it's all metaphor. Actually, it's all contained in the rising of the ego is the beginning of, and all the yugas are rolled into one. We see the world. There's good in the world, there's bad in the world. It's all a mixture. There's no simple golden age, and sometimes life seems rosy. Sometimes we face all sorts of difficulties. So it's all a mixture. Once we rise as ego, everything comes into existence. So we don't have to take everything that is said in the scriptures about pralaya and all these yugas and things. That's maybe appropriate to certain people at a certain stage of spiritual development. Once we come to Bhagavan's path, we have to understand nothing is actually real. Nothing exists independent of our perception of it. And he says in that verse, when ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. So how many egos are there? One. And who is that ego? You are that. So all these other people, like in dream, you see so many people. So long as you're dreaming, you take all those people to be sentient. And you have conversations with them, and they seem to enjoy the same things you enjoy, feel pain at the same things you feel pain at. But when you wake up, you know, all those people were just your own mental fabrication. Not only all those other people you saw, even the person you saw as yourself in the dream was him or herself a mental fabrication. So also the person we now take ourselves to be, and all these other people, they're our own fabrication. In whose view do they exist? To whom do all these appear? That is what we need to investigate. So, yes, in a sense, Bhagavan's teachings are solipsism. But he didn't stop with solipsism, because solipsism says there's only one mind. But what's beyond that? Bhagavan is not interested in the one ego. What is beyond it? That's what he's asking us to investigate. How to investigate, how to know what is beyond the ego. Everything else exists only in the view of ego. So in order to know what is beyond ego, we have to investigate the ego itself. Investigate from where it rose. That is only from ourselves. Does that answer both your questions? Rolled into one?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah. But this is why Bhagavan's teachings don't appeal to most people. Even you'll find many devotees of Bhagavan, they pay lip service to what Bhagavan said, but they don't really take it seriously. They don't really believe. But it all exists only in my view. They're devoted to Bhagavan, but Bhagavan naturally he attracts us. But many people are devoted to Bhagavan without being devoted to his teachings. But the very fact of being drawn to Bhagavan will eventually draw everyone to his teachings. So we all have to, ultimately, there's only one way home. As Bhagavan said, go the way you came. How did we come? We came by rising as ego. So it's only by this ego subsiding is the way home. And how does the ego the ego rises by being aware of other things, by attending to things other than itself. It subsides by turning its attention back on itself. So this is the only way. But we don't have to go out and preach this in the streets, because then we'll just be clashing with the Christian preachers who say Jesus is the only way, and the Muslim preachers who say Islam is the only way. I mean, everyone thinks their way is the only way. We would be just as bad as them if we go out. But in our heart of hearts, we have to understand why this is the only way. It's not just because it's written in books, but this is the true path or something. Bhagavan has given his teachings in a very rational way. Now we all experience ourselves as a person, but can we actually be this person that we seem to be? If we were actually this person, we couldn't be aware of ourselves without being aware of this person. But we continue to be aware in dream when we're not aware of this person is then supposed to be sleeping in bed, but we're aware of ourselves as some other person who's engaged in other activities. In sleep, we're not aware of ourselves as a person at all. So we cannot be what we seem to be now. We can understand this by logic. So Bhagavan's teachings, Bhagavan often used to say, don't believe what you don't know. So Bhagavan's path is not a path of belief. Bhagavan's path is undermining all our beliefs. He's asking us to question all our most fundamental beliefs. What is the most fundamental of all our beliefs? Obviously, I am Michael is the start of all my beliefs. then all Michael's other beliefs follow. So the most fundamental belief is I am this person, and arising out of that, if I am this person, if I am this body, since I am real, then this body must be real. So by experiencing this body as I'm experiencing this body as real. And this body is part of the world, so this whole world is real. So we cannot but experience the world as if it is real. Just like in dream, we experience the dream world as if it's real. So Bhagavan is undermining all our beliefs, our belief in what we are, our belief in the reality of the world. So Bhagavan's path is not a path of belief. It's a path of as Bhagavan said, here it's not a matter of learning, it's a matter of unlearning. So it's a very, very radical path. So we shouldn't worry about others, but to what extent have we understood this? Even we haven't really understood this path. If we have really understood, when Bhagavan says there's no happiness at all in any of the things of the world, happiness lies only within. If we have really understood that, we wouldn't be still looking outwards. So we understand at a superficial level, but still deep down, that conviction that happiness is to be gained from external things, that is still there. That is because of, as Bhagavan says, that is because of our aviveka. And in that paragraph of Nāṉ Ār where Bhagavan talks about that, in 14th paragraph, Bhagavan even comes down to our level. He says, we think that we get happiness from the things of the world because of our aviveka. He actually uses the word our as if he's also having a viveka. But because he comes down to our level. But it is because of our lack of judgment. Why we have this lack of judgment, this lack of clear, because our mind is clouded. What clouds our mind? It's our viṣaya-vāsaṇas. So long as we have desires for things, but our desire for things will cloud our intellect. The more we turn our mind within, when we're turning our mind within, we're turning back towards the original source of all light. The light that illumines the mind, which in turn illumines the world, the world is illumined by physical light. The light that enables us to know that physical light is the mind. And the light that enables this mind to know all that is the original light of pure self-awareness. That is Bhagavan. So when we're turning our attention back within, we're turning our attention back to the original light, we are thereby clarifying our mind and dissolving, in the clear light of self-awareness, the viṣaya-vāsaṇas are dissolved and weakened. And so our mind is less clouded, the viveka is shining more clearly. And so that's how vairagya is developed. The more clearly we understand that happiness lies within, the less desire we will have to attend to anything else. And so none of us have truly understood Bhagavan until we have merged back in him. And when we merge back in him, there'll be no one left to understand anything. So we're on a journey. We're slowly, the more we put Bhagavan's teachings into practice, the more clarity we get, the more clarity of understanding we get. But the final goal we are seeking is the dissolution of the one who seeks to understand, who seeks to know.
Sometimes it feels so close.
Yes.
Have lots of experiences and stuff, but it's like my own prayer is to give you a one-way ticket, because every time you get close, you get it.
Yeah.
But then there are these exit doors that exist, and it just brings you back, And my only prayer is give me a small window, a one-way ticket, and close all these tickets.
Yes.
So there's no way.
Bhagavan is offering you a one-way ticket. He's waiting in your heart with the one-way ticket, but we don't go into it.
Slowly, it's actually practice. And, it's a journey. And
Yeah. But that's another thing about Bhagavan's path. Bhagavan used the analogy of a runaway cow. The cow has run away from its stall and it's roaming here and there looking for nice green grass. If we want to get the cow to come back to its stall as quickly as possible, we shouldn't run after it with a stick and try beating it. We go after it with a nice bunch of green grass, tempt it back. So Bhagavan expects us to take a gentle approach to this path. We can't force it. We're not yogis. We're not trying to force our mind into a state. We are slowly weaning our mind away from its taste in external things. We're not beating ourselves up. Okay, if we're honest with ourselves, we all have viṣaya-vāsaṇas. We all have interests, likes, concerns, cares about the world, about ourselves, about our family, about our loved ones, about so many things. We can't forcibly get rid of these things, but we can slowly wean our mind away from them by cultivating this love to turn within. So it's a very gentle path Bhagavan has. And Bhagavan is very, very patient. He knows it takes time. He knows that we're not yet ready to let go. But he said, do this. Persevere in this path. When someone once asked Bhagavan, what is the sign of progress in this path? He said, perseverance. Because perseverance is our perseverance is the measure of our real bhakti, our real love. And love alone is the way. Bhagavan used to say, bhakti is the mother of jnana. Without love, we cannot follow this path. So Bhagavan's path is the path of jnana. It's also the path of bhakti. It's the culmination of the path of bhakti, the highest bhakti. Yeah, we can consider it as that, but in order to leap into the abyss, we have to be ready to let go. So we need to be willing. And why we haven't leapt into that abyss? The abyss is our own, is the pure self-awareness, letting go of the ego. Why we haven't let go of the ego? Because we still have desires and attachments. So we have to wean our mind away from those desires and attachments. And the only way to love alone begets love. So it's only by following this path of self-investigation, of self-surrender, by more and more yielding to Bhagavan. By turning within, we are yielding to the will of Bhagavan. Because Bhagavan wants nothing more than for us to dissolve back into our source. So by following this, we're following the path of bhakti, and the more we follow this path of love, the more our desires and attachments for other things will drop off. We don't have to fight our viṣaya-vāsaṇas. Bhagavan never said fight your viṣaya-vāsaṇas. He said, whatever thought may arise, to whom does it arise? Turn your attention back within. And thereby the viṣaya-vāsaṇas get weaker and weaker and weaker.
There's a huge element of fear.
We're afraid. Why? Because without desire there would be no fear. Fear is the consequence of desire. So long as you have a desire or attachment, you fear to lose that which you desire or are attached to. So viṣaya-vāsaṇas are the root of the root cause of the problem. And whose viṣaya-vāsaṇas are they? They're egos. So ego is the root of the root. The ultimate root is the ego. So we can get rid of all our viṣaya-vāsaṇas only by getting rid of ego. But in order to get rid of ego, we have to weaken our viṣaya-vāsaṇas to a considerable extent by cultivating this love to be aware of ourselves alone.
Everything is predetermined in this world.
Yes.
For all of us, right? When I'm talking with you, it's also predetermined. I'm coming here and
when we say...
what I'm saying is, if everything is predetermined, then is there a will required for turn ourselves inward? That is also predetermined?
No.
That is exclusive of predetermination.
Bhagavan said, the term Bhagavan used for predetermination is prarabdha. Bhagavan said prarabdha affects only the outward term mind. It can never obstruct us turning within. What is prarabdha? What is predetermined? Prarabdha is the fruit of our past actions, selected fruit of our past actions. Prarabdha is primarily concerned not with what we do, but with what we are to experience. Everything that we are to experience in this life is predetermined. In order for us to experience all that is predetermined, certain actions on our part are required. For example, if it is our destiny to get a certain job, let's say, for that job you need certain qualifications. So you need to work to get those qualifications. Since it is our prarabdha to get that job, we will be made to do whatever actions are required to get the qualifications in order to get the job. So a lot of our actions are driven by prarabdha, but not all of our actions. Because if prarabdha was the only driving force behind our actions, then we couldn't create a gamya, because a gamya is by definition action that we do of our own will. But it's not even a simple matter of some actions are by prarabdha, some actions are by will, because most actions are driven by both will and prarabdha. Because supposing it's your destiny to get a certain job, chances are you also want to get that job. So in studying hard or working to get the qualifications that are required for that job, you are driven by prarabdha, you're also driven by your will because you want that job. So we cannot distinguish which actions are driven by prarabdha, which actions are driven by our will, or to what extent any one action is driven either by prarabdha or by will. Both these forces are working in our life. But one thing is sure, no matter what we want, when we talk will, we're talking about what we want. No matter what we want, and no matter how much we work to achieve what we want, we cannot change what we are destined to experience, even an iota. That is why Bhagavan said to his mother, that which is to happen is going to happen no matter what we try, how much we try to obstruct it. That which is not to happen is not going to happen, no matter how much we try to make it happen. So there's no point we shouldn't make any effort to change what we're destined to experience. If we're destined to experience it, we'll be made to do whatever actions are necessary for us to experience that. So the only correct use of our will is to turn within, to surrender our will to Bhagavan. That is the correct use of our will. But if we don't turn within, if we don't surrender, our will be driving us to do actions, to do this and that and everything. But that won't be changing, that won't change anything that we experience.
Now, like in the first paragraph, when you have the apostolova, when you do the inward self-routine, it nullifies your outside vasanas, or any of the vasanas that are, it says in the first paragraph, right?
Yes.
So it gives aṟindu-viḍum, right? So the one,
yes.
And self-inquiry continuously, even your strongest vasanas and all predetermination gets vanished.
Vasanas and predetermination are different. Vasanas...
predetermination is coming from vasanas.
Yes. That is, the vasanas Bhagavan is talking about here is the viṣaya-vāsaṇas. That's our liking to experience phenomena. Because we have a liking to experience phenomena, I've got a viṣaya-vāsaṇa, I like chocolate. That gives me a karma vasana. I go seeking chocolate. Whenever I can, I eat the chocolate. So even the karma vasanas are like the outer shell. Within every karma vasana, there's a viṣaya-vāsaṇa. Whatever action we are inclined to do, we're inclined to do it because we want to achieve something thereby, even if it's just the satisfaction of doing that action. So the most basic vasanas, outward-going vasanas, that is, the most basic of the outward-going vasanas is the viṣaya-vāsanas. The viṣaya-vāsanas lead to karma vasanas. Karma vasanas lead to karma. Karma, karma there means agamya. It's the karma vasanas prompt us to do agamya. That agamya bears fruit, creates fruit. That fruit gets added to our sanchita. From that, a certain portion is selected in each life as prarabdha. That is what is predetermined. So when it is said everything is predetermined, it doesn't literally mean everything. It doesn't mean the rising of the ego, the subsidence of the ego. It doesn't mean that is predetermined. Everything that is to be experienced by us in this lifetime is predetermined. Everything that is to happen to us. But it doesn't mean that everything we do is predetermined, or everything we want is predetermined. What we want, that is, Bhagavan says in verse 19, Vidimati moolam vivekam ilake, vidimati vellam vivādam. This dispute about which prevails, fate or will, is only for those who cannot distinguish the root of fate and will. The root of fate and will is the ego. But there's another reason why that vivādam is based on a mistaken notion. People think that will and fate and predetermination, fate, are mutually opposed to each other. That is not so. Each has its own domain. But what we want has no jurisdiction over the domain of fate, of prarabdha. What we are destined to experience, we will experience whether we like it or not. We have no freedom, our will has no jurisdiction over what we are to experience. Likewise, prarabdha has no jurisdiction over our will. It may be your destiny to be a rich man or to be a poor man or whatever. The fact that you're rich or the fact that you're poor has no impact. You may be quite happy being poor. There are many poor people in the world who are quite content. There are many rich people in the world who are miserable because they want more. So what we want has nothing to do with prarabdha. It is completely independent of prarabdha. And what we are destined to experience is only under jurisdiction of prarabdha. Our will has no authority over it. So there are two different jurisdictions. There's what we are to experience and what we want to experience. This is prarabdha, this is will. So the two don't clash. The only place where they seem to clash is in terms of our actions, because some of our actions, we have to do those actions because they're required for us to experience our prarabdha. Our will cannot prevent it. We cannot. If it's my destiny after this meeting to cross the road and be hit by a car, I cannot avoid that. I will just make the wrong decision at that moment, or the car is not coming so fast I can run across and cross the road. Because it's my destiny, I have to make that decision and cross the road. So my will cannot prevent that. But actually my will it doesn't mean that my crossing the road, my will is not involved, because I'm in a hurry to get home. I want to get home quickly. That makes me impatient, so I run across the road. But the actual cause of that accident is my prarabdha. The fact that my will also wanted, because my will I ran across the road, is coincidental. Another time, I may be equally impatient. I may cross the road and I may cross before the car comes. So I may not, it may be just my will. So we cannot tell which actions, or to what extent each action is driven by fate, to what extent it's driven by will. We need not be concerned about that, because why we need not be concerned about prarabdha? Because we cannot change it anyway. Let prarabdha take care of itself. Why we should not be concerned about our agamya, the actions we do? Because so long as we have a will of our own, we will be doing agamya. Agamya is not the problem. The problem is the will with which we do it. If we surrender our will to Bhagavan, then we won't be doing any agamya. So our concern should only be about our will. What do we want? If we destroy our viṣaya-vāsaṇas, then automatically we'll be avoiding doing agamya. So the more we follow this path of self-investigation, the more our viṣaya-vāsaṇas are getting weaker, the less agamya we'll be doing. But our aim isn't to avoid doing agamya. Our aim is to destroy the ego, the one who does the agamya. Why we do agamya? Because of these viṣaya-vāsaṇas. Why we rise as ego? Because of these viṣaya-vāsaṇas. So we have to weaken the viṣaya-vāsaṇas, cultivate that love to know ourselves as we actually are, and thereby we will dissolve the ego, and along with it will dissolve all vasanas. Not only will we dissolve all vasanas, all the three karmas will go. Because as Bhagavan says, if a husband has 3 wives, when the husband dies, all 3 wives become widows. 1 wife doesn't remain sumangali, unwidowed. So the root of all these things is ego. The root of both the vasanas, the will, and of all 3 types of karmas, it all belongs to ego. Get rid of ego, you get rid of everything. But in order to get rid of ego, we must be willing. We must be willing to surrender ourselves. How to become willing? Follow this path Bhagavan taught. That will cultivate the willingness.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes?
Willingness, that's a desire.
Yes.
We want to remove our desires.
Yes, we want to remove our desires. That want is itself a desire, isn't it?
Yes.
But the thing is, desire is actually our real nature, in a sense. That is, our real nature is to love ourselves, to love happiness. Every desire, what is behind every desire is a desire for happiness. That desire for happiness, we can also call it love if we want, that is our real nature. But the problem with desires for things other than ourselves, we are seeking happiness in the wrong place. So what we need, we can never get rid of all desires. But what desires we need to get rid of are the desires to experience anything other than ourselves. How to get rid of that desire? By cultivating the desire to be aware of ourselves alone. That desire to be aware of ourselves alone is what is called love. Swapna bhakti. So desire is our very nature. But we have to direct it in the right direction. Instead of directing it towards things other than ourselves, we should direct it back towards ourselves, because what we are seeking, what every desire is a desire for ultimately, is a desire for happiness. Whether we desire to have a Ferrari or a Peugeot, or whether we desire to become Prime Minister or President, whether we desire to be rich or this or that, whatever we may desire, behind every desire, whether we desire to have revenge on our enemies, whatever it may be, what is behind every desire is a desire for happiness. Even the Hitlers and the Stalins and the Genghis Khans and all these people, they're the same as us. They're also seeking happiness, but they just happen to have, their viveka happens to be more dense than our viveka. It's only a matter of degree. We also have suffer from a viveka. They have denser viveka. So they think that by conquering their enemies and by doing whatever terrible things they did, they thought that is the way to happiness. So we are all seeking happiness. We all have bhakti. Our bhakti is directed in the wrong direction. So what we should have bhakti for is for our own self, to be aware of ourselves as we actually are. Sadhguru used to say, people say we should get rid of desire. That is the one thing that is impossible. We can never get rid of desire. But instead of desiring petty things, we should desire the whole. We should have paripurna asai, that infinite desire. That is desire for the infinite, which is ourself.
Yeah, I like to ask you one thing. Like, in the first paragraph, you mentioned about being contemplative.
Yes.
Looking into ourselves. Like, how far do we look into ourselves? Up to what extent? And how long do we blame ourselves for everything that's happening around us?
That Bhagavan answers that in the very next paragraph, which we'll deal with next time. So long as there are viṣaya-vāsaṇas in the mind, so long the investigation, who am I, is necessary. So long as we have the slightest inclination to go outwards, to be aware of anything other than ourselves, so long this investigation is necessary. In other words, so long as there's an ego, because the very nature of the ego is to have desire to be aware of things other than itself, because ego comes into existence only by being aware of other things. So long as there is ego, we need to investigate ourselves.
But how long we blame ourselves for everything that's happening around us? And how long should we actually think that it's only because of us that are happening around us, or it's other factors which are actually affecting us? In the end, if we do that thing, it's in the end we are affecting ourselves, and in the end we are generally being depressed about all the things which are actually, like, even lust, being, desires, everything, it's ending into depression.
No desire can satisfy. Whatever desire we may have leads to dissatisfaction. Desire is dukkha. Desire leads to dissatisfaction. The only desire that will lead to satisfaction is the desire to be aware of ourselves as we actually are, because we are infinite happiness, infinite satisfaction. So we shouldn't be blaming ourselves. Bhagavan says we shouldn't be we have to give up the thought I am a sinner. It doesn't. We're all sinners in a sense. Because there's selfishness in all of us, and so long as there's ego, there's selfishness. So long as there's selfishness, there's sin. So we're all sinners, but that shouldn't preoccupy ourselves. Because who is the sinner? The sinner is the ego. Are we this ego? We seem to be. Let's investigate ourselves, and then we'll see. But we were never a sinner. So it's not, we don't have to, we all have lust, we all have so many desires. We're not to blame ourselves from these things, and we have to, this is a part of jnana. We have to take a very intelligent approach to it. We cannot expect to be suddenly free of all our desires. So we've got to slowly wean our mind away from them. Like one desire that many people have difficulty with is this desire, is lust, the desire for carnal pleasure. It's a very, very strong desire. So long as we experience a body as I, we will have that desire for carnal pleasure. It's a very nature of, we can say it in terms, it's a biological need. So Bhagavan has sung in Aṛindu-viḍum, Kamari Endrani, that is, Bhagavan understood the problem of it, so he prays to Aṛindu, you're praised as Kamari, the killer of karma. But can it be true? How, if it is true, how can this lust enter the heart of someone who's taken refuge at your feet? So why Bhagavan prayed like that? Because he knows this is a problem everyone faces. Until ego is destroyed, we cannot be totally free of this desire. So what do? Do we all become celibate? The desire isn't solved. For some people, celibacy may be appropriate, But we don't get rid of a desire just by denying ourselves. It may help some people, but it may not be appropriate for all. So celibacy isn't necessarily the way to... Sometimes if you try to be celibate, your mind will be thinking more and more on these things. Chadwick recorded somewhere, but Bhagavan once said to someone who was troubled by these thoughts, it's better to do it than to think about it. So we have to take an intelligent approach, sometimes satisfying our desires to a limited extent is a better way than completely denying the desires. Because when we satisfy the desire, we see actually there's nothing in it. Bhagavan said the nature of desire is it makes even an atom like Mount Meru before it's achieved. That's even a very insignificant thing, seems very big when we're desiring it. But after achievement, it makes even Mount Meru appear like an atom. If you're very poor, getting £100 seems a very big achievement. You work very hard and you save up that £100. You're happy for a moment, but then, no, this £100 can go so quickly. I need more than that, I want £1,000. So that £100 now has become insignificant, now you've achieved it, so £1,000 is your goal. And even when you've got £1 billion, you still won't be satisfied. Because you'll see the billionaire next door has £2 billion and you've only got £1 billion. So you want more. So we can never satisfy desire, but sometimes by satisfying our desire to a certain extent, it helps us to understand the trivial nature of what we are desiring. So we have to take an intelligent approach to how to deal with our viṣaya-vāsaṇas. Ultimately, we destroy them by turning within. But we have to live with them until then, so we have to know how to deal with them. If we try and deny all our desires, if we try and become an ascetic when we're not yet mature enough, for some people are mature enough to lead a life of celibacy, to live a very ascetic life. Not all of us are. So we should, but our prarabdha, Bhagavan knows what is best for us. If we are not yet mature enough for a celibate life, Bhagavan would give us a non-celibate life. That's not an obstacle. The obstacle is not the action, the obstacle is the desire. So that is it, the desires we should be concerned about, not about the actions. Does that answer what you were saying?
I think here, how much we are contented in our life and satisfied with what we have. That's also one of the drivers to reduce the desire.
Yes. Well,
if you are more contented in life with what you have, more and more you think of that I'm contented with what I have in life. So you minimize the desire.
Exactly. And if you have vairagya, you'll be satisfied with very, very simple things. So yes, that is. But there is even in the satisfaction, there's an underlying dissatisfaction. Even if we live a relatively contented life, we're still not perfectly happy, are we? We're not experiencing the infinite happiness that we seek. So we still have to seek that infinite happiness, but we cease seeking it outside, we seek it within.
But the intensity of desire comes down.
The intensity of outward-going desires comes down. The intensity of the inward-going desire... Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. But there has to be desire. So if we want to get rid of the desire to go outwards, we have to have the desire to go within. And to the extent that we have desire to go within, to that extent the desire to go outwards will. Yeah. So pravritti or nivritti, it's a simple choice we have. Pravritti means going outwards, nivritti means going within, subsiding, returning, withdrawing. So Bhagavan's path is a path of nivritti. So all the vasanas that lead to pravritti, we need to free ourselves from, and the vasanas that lead to nivritti, the liking to surrender ourselves to be content with whatever our lot may be, the love to turn within, this is what the vasanas that we need to cultivate.
The process of self-inquiry, there's an element of thinking about where the thought is coming from. And that, in a way, happens should happen constantly.
Yeah.
That thought process is driven by your mind.
Ultimately, it's driven by the will. Sometimes it's described, the mind is described as having, consisting of 4 parts. Manas, buddhi, chittam and ahankara. Manas means mind. That means the thinking, the perceiving, the cognizing aspect of the mind. Buddhi is intellect, the discriminating, the judging, reasoning aspect of the mind. Chittam is the will, the desiring aspect. And ahankaram is the root of all of these. So the very heart of the mind is the ego. And the ego has a will, it has desires. Those desires determine what we judge to be good or bad is according to our desires. What we judge to be true or untrue is according to our desires. Most people judge the world to be true because they have desire for the world. So we have to, when we're going back within, what we have to deal with, ultimately it's the rising of the ego. But what is it? Why does the ego want to rise again and again? It's because of its will. So it's the will is what these vasanas that Bhagavan is talking about. So that's where the real problem lies. It's thoughts. Why thoughts arise? Because we want to be aware of things other than ourselves. So it's at the level of the will that we have to tackle everything. When we sit down to try and attend to ourselves, why we end up thinking so many other things instead of attending to ourselves? Because of our desires and attachments, because of our will. So how do we achieve what we're seeking to achieve, which is that state of just pure self-awareness, just pure self-attentiveness? It is by cultivating the love to be aware of ourselves alone, and thereby freeing ourselves from the desires for other things, weakening our desires for other things.
So weakening our desires should lead to...
Well, we can weaken our desires only to the extent that we cultivate the love to be aware of ourselves. So the more we attend to our thoughts arise because we attend to them. And we attend to them because we want to attend to them. If we want to attend only to ourselves, to whom would thoughts arise? If we're not attending to them, they can't arise. They can only arise because we attend to them. So our attention is what gives thoughts strength. If we...
When a thought arises, how do you not attend to it?
To whom does it arise? Attend to yourself rather than attend to the thinker rather than the thought. Attend to who is aware of the thought. Attend to that which is aware of the thought rather than the thought itself. In other words, we have to constantly be turning our attention back towards ourselves. That's why Bhagavan gave these questions. Not that he wants us to continue questioning. The questions are showing us whatever else we may be aware of, we are aware of it because we are there. So to whom is this thought? But in order to constantly turn our attention back towards ourselves, we must have great love to do so.
I think, Michael, most of the thoughts, if we observe, right, 80% of our thoughts are either about the past or about the future. How many times we are in the present, right?
Yeah.
So once we observe that, most of them we can eliminate the past thoughts, which is useless, and about future.
Most of our thoughts are unnecessary.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
So, yeah. The only thing that is really necessary is to attend to ourselves.